Me, a bro.
Yep.
He, a dude.
That's good stuff. All right. Let's try it. Okay. Welcome to the We Will Journey podcast. We're talking about faith and life as it happens, and not the glossy exterior we wish it was.
Oh.
What, man? What did I do wrong?
I think you said it's because all the things I was thinking about before. But we can edit that. You got that part good.
Oh.
You got it good. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay, just...
Now it's your turn.
Good?
Yeah.
Wait. We're going to get under the surface. I should have said all those things before. We should have waited down and dirty until after we read this part.
Okay.
Okay. Wait. We get under the surface and explore the down and dirty. Okay. Maybe we should. It doesn't have to be word for word, right?
No. I mean, I gave an interpretation.
Okay. All right. We get under the surface and explore the down and dirty of life as it pertains to our beliefs, our relationships, politics, and absolutely everything else.
Oh, there we go. That was good. All right.
When I'm dead, laying in my coffin, all my friends all gather round. They can say I'm just sleeping good alone, the sweet peace I have found.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, Seth.
Hello. That was
Was that not a good hello?
Good.
Was it a little snarky?
I don't know. It seemed like you were excited to talk to me, I guess.
Oh, absolutely.
I wasn't sure at first if it was snarky or if it was like enthusiastic.
No, it's just pure enthusiasm. But
hello, Tyler. Or is it more maybe almost a little bit of like telemarketer or something?
Okay.
Hello, Tyler. I have a great offer for you.
Nice. What's the offer?
Well, for $3.99 a month, you can get the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Oh, I thought it was chest hair. I thought, you were showing off a little chest hair today, and I thought that was the offer. So, but
I can. I mean, if it's just you in the room.
Yes, it is just me. Unless you want me to invite people in, I could.
I was saying, like, you had to broadcast. I'm dressing down. I'm dressing down. I'm in my.
Mm-hmm. You said you were in a tux earlier.
Yeah. I usually. Well, that's the thing that most people don't know about me is I usually wear a tux as my casual wear.
Yeah.
But when I'm around other people, then I don't dress up like that.
Do you remember the episode of The Office where Jim wears a tux to work, and the new boss shows up?
Yeah.
And Jim's trying to explain why he's in a tux, and the dude just does not. He doesn't care at all.
Because he's trying to impress him, right?
Well,
Jim's trying to impress him, right?
No, Jim was being Jim, and the new boss was not into Jim at all. But
yeah, there's some really. Is that what, Idris Elba?
I think so. Yeah.
There was some. I went back and, or Alyssa and we actually finished The Office for the first time. I had never seen the last season, or
really?
I had never seen the completion of the last season. But going back, I was surprised with how funny some of those periods were where they had the different guest stars be bosses or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they had a number of different ones. the last couple seasons.
Robert California.
Yes, he was the one that lasted the longest.
Yeah.
And they had Will Ferrell and Idris Elba and the British lady who ends up staying on.
Yeah.
But
she's good. She's good.
Just like takes over the office, right? Because
Andy. Yeah, when Andy leaves, she takes over.
nobody knows what to do. They can't like tell her no because they're like, I don't know. She's just saying she's the boss. What do we do? And she starts giving everybody raises, and so by the end, I think it's like what Jim is the only one who left who's not like condoning her or whatever.
Yeah.
She's like, "Would you like a big bonus this Christmas?" Like, of course.
Yeah, let's do it.
What?
Yeah. Okay, so couple things. I wanted to say, your brother, whom we both love dearly.
I love both my brothers, by the way.
Well, yes,
both of them a lot.
Right, sure, yeah, but
they're dear to my heart. Both are dear to my heart.
I have more of a relationship with you and Jeremy, and not Jonah as much. So, although I like Jonah, I just don't really know him all that well. But with that said, I just wanted to just say how much I appreciate, because we like to crack jokes about your brother sometimes. But I also want to say how much I appreciate him, because he actually, I think he listens to this podcast pretty much as soon as we put it out. And then sometimes he'll even give me like written feedback, which, feedback sometimes isn't fun if somebody just like criticizes, but he doesn't really criticize as much as he like actually gives nice feedback and interjects things we may want to think about. Yeah. And so I just wanted to kind of shout out to Jeremy this morning and say, thank you. Thank you for, listening and having good thoughts and good feedback, and actually taking an interest in what the things that we're talking about. I thought...
He's calling right now.
Yeah, he's calling me right now. I'm going to have to... I can't take his call though. We're busy. So...
He's listening live. And he just called in because they heard his name.
So I just wanted to say that. I do appreciate that.
That's very cool, actually.
Yeah. But so here's the thing that I thought of for today. And you said, what are you talking about? But I came up with this idea of embodied consciousness gardens. And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's fine. That's fine.
It sounds like something that one of the Beatles, a song they wrote after they broke up, maybe.
Yeah, or probably during that psychedelic stage.
Or maybe, maybe at the when.
Embodied consciousness gardens. I don't know how it would go. Yeah. All right, man. So I've been reading a lot about the fact that as human beings, we're embodied, right? We have bodies.
That's true.
Yeah, we have bodies. And then there's like our brain. And then we also have consciousness, or some just refer to it as mind. Okay? So like brain, mind, or consciousness. Mm-hmm. So we're embodied, we have a brain. But there's also like this consciousness thing or this mind thing that is out there, and science recognizes it. And as Christians, we've grown up with that type of thinking because we would say soul or spirit. Okay, and so I've just been thinking a little bit about this whole thing. Yeah, soul or spirit. You have like a confused look on your face, but
I'm just trying to think. Like I think I've always thought of mind and spirit as different things and talked about them both.
Oh yeah, well, so
I don't know.
Science talks about brain. That's physical, right? So brain is physical. Mind or consciousness isn't necessarily a physical thing. So we would normally talk about that as soul or spirit. And some people believe that we have a soul and a spirit. Some people think of them as the same, soul and spirit. So there's different thoughts on that too. But for the most part, science acknowledges that there is this consciousness that is kind of who we are, but they really can't pinpoint it. And then that near-death experience stuff really elaborates on consciousness or mind as being more spiritual, non-physical. So, yeah. But I was just kind of like running with this thought, right? I was just thinking about, okay, we're embodied. We have a consciousness. And the really interesting thing about that book that I just read about near-death experience called After by Dr. Bruce Grayson is he was talking about most people that have this near-death experience describe the mind as like kind of like a reducing valve, right? So let's say you have a big water hose and then a little water hose, and what your brain does is it kind of acts as like this valve that reduces the amount of water from the big hose to the small hose. And so here on Earth, we're only experiencing like a small part of reality. And actually there's like this much greater reality out there. And our brains kind of act as a reduction agent and make reality simpler so our physical selves can understand what's taking place.
Okay.
Are you tracking with me? Because people that have near-death experiences talk about kind of being enlightened or like the blindfold comes off in this experience, and now they can understand all kinds of stuff, right? And they're seeing colors. I mean, God, all this crazy stuff is happening, and they're understanding it. But when they come back into their body, it's like kind of like, oh, I'm not going to understand all of this anymore. So,
like the spirit. So you're saying that would be like the spiritual realm.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the unseen.
The unseen spiritual world where God exists. Yeah. And that's a pretty biblical idea. I mean, we may not talk about it exactly the same way, but that idea is pretty much what we kind of think the Bible is referring to when it talks about God's realm, you know?
Like not fighting against flesh and blood, but against the principalities. You know, it says our war is not against the seen, but the unseen, basically, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's referencing that world, but that's referencing the dark side of it. So,
but I mean, that's the thing, is like, usually we don't see that either, which is, I'm thankful for, you know. I know people who have had glimpses of that as well, a number of people. Yeah. But yeah, that's like the side that's just as real, but hopefully not as interesting to us Christians.
Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting. We don't want to experience it too bad, obviously. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun. And we don't want other people to experience it either, right? That's the other side of it. We'd rather people that we know and care about for sure, but just people in general, we wouldn't wish that upon anybody.
And that's what I mean by interesting, like taking an interest in something, like trying to discover it, trying to find out more about it. It's like, no, that's okay. It's more those things when if you have to confront it, then we're glad that we have the God that we have on our side. But I don't think it's ever a healthy thing to like search it out. That's what I mean by like taking interest in it, you know?
Yeah. So is the God that we have who's on our side not the God that some people have who's not on their side?
What do you have to explain what you're saying?
Well, you just said it in an interesting way. You said, "I'm just thankful that we have the God
So
that we
as
have
Christ,
who's on our
as
side."
I would believe it, as Christians and children of God, we have the Holy Spirit who helps us. Someone who is not a child of God, who's not have Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, does not have the Holy Spirit, I don't think has the same protection from that spirit, that dark spiritual realm, as we do. And I think that's seems to be what I see in the Bible as well.
Yeah. So
it doesn't mean that God doesn't protect other people, because not, everyone's not running around possessed, you know what I mean, by demonic spirits, obviously.
Right. So would you say God is on the side of somebody who maybe isn't seeking out a relationship with him?
On his side. I guess I'm thinking by that, like, kind of literally, I think he's on our side. But I do think God is for people in general. I don't think he's, you know what I mean? Like, I think there's different, you have to kind of, there's like different ways of putting that, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
it's like,
you put it in an interesting way, so that's why I asked you about it.
If I was going to say, for example, I'm on your side, when someone says they're a fan of a certain football team, be like, oh yeah, I'm on your side in that.
Yeah.
Then I'm just kind of saying, like, figuratively, I'm for you, like, I'm also kind of behind that same sports team. But if I could also say, like, oh no, I'm on their side, like I literally play for that team. That's why I guess I would kind of say, like we're on God's team because I am covered by the blood of Christ. But I think also in the same sense, like, God is, he's not, my understanding, yes. I mean, it's a whole nother topic to go down, predestination and all those kind of things. But I think in general, God is for his creation.
Have you ever
Same
read,
way I think he's for creation in general, and why he wants us to take care of it.
Yeah.
He wants us to take care of the world. He wants us to take care of orphans and widows. I think God is for life. He's for good.
Yeah.
And
have you ever read any Karl Barth?
No, but a lot of names of a lot of different people.
Well, he would be an interesting one for you to check out regarding predestination in election. He has some interesting thoughts on that. Anyways,
interesting.
Yeah, that'd be a guy that I would. He challenges the evangelical norms, but
that's funny because evangelicals are very split down that as far as like the predestination thing. That's not like a like I know so many. I feel like I know as many evangelicals who are on one side of the coin as ones that are on the other side as far as like predestination.
Calvinism versus Arminianism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like the one for those, obviously most common people would have no idea what that means, but so like basically one side being that God kind of pre-decided if people are going to.
Yeah, you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose. You're in or you're out, and he chose you or he didn't choose you. Mm-hmm. And Barth would argue that he chose Jesus. And that Jesus is actually the elected / predestined one, and that Jesus died for all of mankind. And he stopped short of universalism, but it's really an interesting view to think about. And I tend to agree with him on some things, and maybe not everything, but anyways, it's interesting. especially when we say, like, well, God's on our side, or those kind of things, and because it gives it insinuates that God isn't on somebody else's side.
Well, I mean, he makes that clear in the Old Testament, at least a lot. He picks sides quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that was also before, some things changed. I mean, God didn't change, though. So that's the thing. God didn't change. I don't know.
Do you think God wasn't, or they didn't want God? Do you think God didn't want them, or they didn't want God? In the Old Testament, you referenced that.
That God didn't want them, or they didn't want God?
Mm-hmm.
Both, and I think there was different. I mean, if my opinion, I think there was different, like not every situation was the same.
Yeah.
I think there was times where people, it's like the thing for me, and this is where people will see like, oh, these guys aren't theologians or whatever, maybe. But, it's like, for me, it's like with Pharaoh, it seemed like it was like both. It was like Pharaoh kind of hardened his heart against God, but God kind of hardened Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like,
well, a biblical scholar of some kind, they have really eloquent ways to discuss the same thing that everybody else that reads it wonders about, and they just don't have the eloquent ways to talk about it, right? They're like, well, how does that work? And
to me, it's all so nuanced, and I think, like we were talking about those two sides, like I think that's kind of part of the issue is with some of these things, we feel like we have to take a certain side. Where I think so much of it is a mystery, like it's often described, just a lot of things around God, like to us, it's mysterious, and to me, it's like I've kind of given up on trying to understand and explain like everything that God has done and will do, and be like, well, that's why, and I can explain it, and like, no, I don't even know what time is, I don't know when God and time, how that works, I don't understand all the how the ways Jesus died for all mankind, but it's like also for the foundation of the world, and and I don't know how there's works predestined, but also we were given a free will, and I think it's just like there's so many things where it is both and I can't necessarily have a better explanation besides I trust God with a lot of those things that I can't grasp.
Right.
And I'm sure there are people that can grasp it, better than I can, maybe.
I don't know. That's they can maybe talk about it, in different ways, but whether we can understand it, I don't know. Well, I think that's the big takeaway is that Jesus is for mankind, and that's why he came and did what he did, is because he's for mankind, not really against mankind. Typically, I would see Jesus and God as for mankind, and I would see mankind as against mankind. So most of the time it's not God who's against us, it's us that's against us. We kind of drag ourselves into our own things and stuff, right? It's not Jesus or God dragging us into that. It is typically us, and I'm not discounting that we could be influenced by the opposite of God and Jesus, which would be like evil spiritual stuff. I'm not discounting that, but I think even without that, we probably still drag ourselves into most of the muck that we get ourselves into. So that was a long conversation about just something that you said there.
Yeah.
That I just thought was kind of like an interesting little thing. I wasn't anticipating that, but
No, that was good.
anyways, have you ever watched like any documentary, video type stuff on YouTube that shows Earth, and then it kind of shows Earth and the Milky Way, and then the Milky Way and the universe and that kind of stuff? Have you ever watched that?
Just in general, like anything along those lines?
Just so you have like an idea of what I'm talking about. Like,
Yeah, I've seen some stuff. I don't know if it was specifically on YouTube, but yes.
Well, and what happens to Earth, right? We think we're really big as a planet. It seems like our planet is big, but then when you kind of like zoom out and kind of look at Earth, it just becomes this tiny little dot, even in our own galaxy. And then, of course, there's probably billions of galaxies. It seems like galaxies and the universe just kind of is infinite. Like, it doesn't really have a end. And so then you kind of think about God. Francis Chan says something to the effect of, and he's over all of that, right? Like, the universe is infinite, and God is over that. He's bigger than all that, right?
Bigger than infinite.
Bigger, right? And God has never not existed. I've often thought about that. God has never not existed. He's always existed, and so then I was thinking about us, right? And we're kind of like, the Bible uses all of this. We're grass. We're organic, right? We were dust. We die and we go back to dust, and all of this organic talk in Scripture about mankind. And so that's where the garden thing kind of came in, like embodied consciousness gardens. And then, I don't know, man, I've just been thinking about all this stuff. I don't know why. I don't know why I've been thinking about all of it. But I thought, man, we're so tiny, and we're kind of like, it's gardening season. We're kind of like this little garden, and we're like these little plants, and we interact with each other, and we kind of need each other for support and different things. And our consciousness and our physicalness is so temporary, right? Like, you and I, we're essentially like a plant in somebody's garden for this one season, and that's it. Like, they plant us in spring, we're gonna die in fall. It's just a short little thing. Like, it's such a, we're so tiny in the whole scheme of everything, and yet we feel so big, and so I don't know why I've been dwelling on that, but I've been dwelling on it, just thinking about the universe, thinking about our little minuscule planet in the whole scheme of things, and even our even more minuscule lives, right? And how they connect to something so much bigger than us that we can't really even comprehend how big that is. Does your mind ever go to that place, Seth? Of just like, we're so small, God's so big, I just can't really wrap my mind around it. And even as I was thinking about it, I'm finding now I can't even talk about it the way I was thinking about it. Oh, your brother's calling again.
He's calling again to correct all the.
He's got the answer. He's got the answer.
All the craziness that was coming out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. So when I was thinking, when you were talking, yeah, I do contemplate that sometimes. What used to always really freak me out when I was a kid was the thinking of the whole idea of eternal, like just eternal life, and like there be no end and no beginning, because that is the one thing that like we have no connection to, like that.
Yeah.
Makes no sense, because every single thing that you see in this world has a beginning and an end. You know what I mean? And so that's the thing. Is like, wow, God. I mean, it's almost like that fear of God in a way. You know what I mean? Like comes into play a little bit, where it's like awe, inspiring, like he's just so much bigger and out of this world. Like, oh, it's like it's so crazy. It's like mind blowing. And so that's kind of part of what I think of, when you bring that up, is like the idea of also eternity, and like God is bigger than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I can't even concept what eternity is. I have no concept of that. And he's bigger than that. But then the other part I think of, which makes me feel kind of like important in God's eyes somehow, is like, I am such a tiny, minuscule little speck or whatever. But at the same time, like if I look at on a smaller scale, or I look at you on a smaller scale or whatever, like you are a huge part of your surrounding, your community, your culture, whatever. You're like, for example, in the grand scheme of things, I'm small, but for some reason, like God has put a huge role in giving it to me as a father,
right?
As a husband, as a role model, as a leader, as a follower, as a part of my apartment building, as a part of my neighborhood. And like so it's weird. It's like, it's like both, it's
yeah.
Because if you get lost in that, like, oh, it's minuscule, it's tiny, then you forget about how big of a role you have in your context. Because to my kids, my role isn't tiny,
right?
And to my community or whatever. So it's interesting. That's why I guess I think about those two different kind of aspects.
The contrast between our bigness and littleness, or our big impact, right? We can have a big impact considering we're planted in spring and harvested in fall.
And it's like, it's like if one person, it's just like, it's like a cog, but it needs to, if you don't take it seriously or whatever, and you don't.
Yeah. We have the ability to produce some big juicy tomatoes, for instance. Right?
Sure.
You and I, we have that ability. We could make some big juicy tomatoes. We need to be pruned a little bit. If we're unpruned, chances are we're never going to produce any big juicy tomatoes, and we're just going to be a green plant, and then we're going to die, and we're never going to actually bear any fruit. But with a little bit of pruning, we can actually produce all kinds of big juicy tomatoes, and then we die, and we get to know that we made juicy tomatoes and a bunch of wonderful meals of like spaghetti and meatballs and salsa and whatever. We just, maybe somebody roasted some of our fruit and a little olive oil and sugar, and it got like kind of sweet tasting and toasty. It was wonderful.
A little mozzarella, balsamico,
little basil. Maybe you're basil. Maybe you're basil and I'm tomato. I don't know.
There you go. Maybe you're mozzarella. Maybe you're the buffalo mozzarella.
Oh wow!
It melt. You break it open, it melts in your mouth. Ooh.
Yeah, sounds so good. But it's really interesting. I don't know. I don't think we're done with this conversation yet.
Buffalo.
We're maybe just we're just getting into this idea of being physical. The boys and I were actually talking last night. We're talking about, well, Dad, so then heaven, we're not physical, so we're just spirits, So that is kind of crazy to think about the fact that right now we have physical bodies. I really think the near-death stuff is really interesting to help us kind of get a little glimpse of what heaven might be like. But that is a non-physical realm. It's a spiritual realm. But then, John, the Apostle John, had this revelation of this future heaven and future earth that are going to re-merge together the way that it probably was more like in the Garden of Eden, and then we're going to get resurrected bodies like Christ had. So now we go back to physical. So we go from physical to spiritual to physical, but that physical at that point in time is going to be like a new physical that we don't totally understand today, because it seems to still be able to do like spiritual things. Jesus walked through walls even though he had a resurrected body. So,
Right.
he didn't use doors and stuff. So it seems like you take like the best of both worlds. You take the best of the physical and the best of the spiritual. You put them together, and that's some future state. Now that just sounds trippy and crazy, and like you and I probably have been smoking something. So,
Like you've been
Yeah.
eating some of the things in your garden that
Yes,
weren't edible.
like
They
magic,
are edible, but
like
not
certain
necessarily.
mushrooms or something.
Yeah, I haven't seen your garden this year yet. I'm excited to see what all you're growing in there.
Yeah, you should be. Yeah, but don't call it my garden, because it is not my garden.
It's not your garden.
It's not even just a hint mine. It's my wife's garden. She puts in all the hard work. I do absolutely nothing. From time to time, I walk in the garden with her, and she shows me everything that she's planted and all the things that she's working on. And I tell her how wonderful it looks, and then I say, "Can I go back inside or something?" But anyways, yeah.
You just get to be the enjoyer of the spoils.
Oh yeah,
Of
yeah,
her hard
totally.
work and labor.
Totally, absolutely.
But I'm sure you can do some good stuff with that. You can use those ingredients she has labored over, and
Yeah.
you make something also incredible out of it. Just like God does out of us in your analogy of us being garden plants.
Yeah, producing fruit. Yeah.
Hmm.
So Jesus is kind of like, or maybe the Holy Spirit. I don't care. It's all the same in some sense, but maybe that could be my wife in the analogy, doing all the pruning in the garden.
Kind of, except we're ones described as the bride.
Yeah, but somebody has to do the pruning. I hadn't even got to the bride part yet.
Oh, yes, right. Yeah, exactly. Natalie is Christ-like. I mean, she is, right?
She's a pruner, and likes to prune those tomato plants and make them bear fruit. Yeah.
Right. I wish prunes tasted better, right? Because it's supposed to be like, really good for you, but
They just don't
I don't
taste
know.
that good. Yeah. Maybe as we get older, we will enjoy them more.
It's kind of like when I was a kid, I didn't like mushrooms very much, and now I like mushrooms, especially if
Yeah.
you cook them right. If cook them
Oh,
in
yeah.
a certain way and
Wonderful.
saute them, get them with some onions and dark brown sugar,
Yeah.
and some pepper and
Yeah.
salt,
Well, I know you need to run.
and olive oil. Yes, I do,
And-
my good
and-
sir.
I think we've given your brother enough things to give us some feedback on today. So hopefully I'll listen to his message since he was calling and see if he has any thoughts. But yeah, it should be good. Should be good.
Yes, it's good. I like how you always think of these things and then throw them on me, and then I sound like a dope trying to find my way.
That's kind of part of the
You're like,
beauty.
What did you say, you idiot?
That's part of the beauty of the podcast is I have these thoughts and then I throw them at you and then we see how you respond.
Imagine you like Mr. Burns sitting up in bed at midnight thinking of these things.
Well, it was like
Yes.
it's like
Yes.
5 a.m. It was like 5 a.m., maybe 6 a.m. this morning when I wrote it down.
Oh, okay. So you're awake with your
Yeah.
coffee and your special handmade pottery cup that is very
Yes.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Unless you've broken them all.
No, I haven't, but I haven't been using them lately. But yeah, I don't need to go into why.
No,
So
Don't. don't go into the whys.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard
All right,
if
man.
you want to be a good listener, don't ask why questions very often because it's just frustrating.
Because it requires you to do more listening.
No, if you're listening to someone and they're explaining something, you're like, but why did you do that? Then they're gonna be like, what? If I knew why, I wouldn't be trying to.
Okay.
Why were you so stupid in that decision-making process?
Yeah. All right, man.
So that's why I won't ask you why you don't use those beautiful cups.
Yeah. Don't ask.
You don't
why.
know.
No, I don't know. All right, I'm letting you go. I'm saying goodbye now. I'm saying goodbye. So
No, you hang up.
You hang up.
No, I can't hang up, but I can pause this recording.